Welcome back to DTNsights. I am the host, Renny Vandewege, General Manager of Weather and Climate Intelligence at DTN. I have two excellent guests with me today. We are going to be talking about all things hurricanes and tropics, which can be a little confusing when you're in the middle of spring, but believe it or not, tropical season is not very far away. And that is always a busy thing for us at DTN. So I am excited to be joined today by Dr. Sam Lillo, a senior software engineer on DTN's forecast team, as well as Andrew Polk, DTN's offshore forecast team leader. Gentlemen, welcome to the hot seat here in DTNsights.
Thanks for having us.
Well, we will kind of get started here talking about you two guys and your background. So, Andrew, I'll start with you. What got you into weather? What got you excited about hurricanes? How did you end up here at DTN?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions there. I think like many meteorologists, started at a very young age for me. I've always been interested in the weather. My mom has joked around that when I was a little kid standing in front of the TV, I think some of us have those stories as meteorologists, but really got interested in hurricanes and offshore once I got my first full-time position right out of graduating from college, which I did ship routing. So that was routing ships around the world along the most fuel efficient routes, but also a lot of that impact was around the weather risk. And with that comes typhoons, if you're in the West Pacific, or hurricanes there in the North Atlantic. That's really where I got my first exposure to tropical cyclone forecasting.
Awesome. How did you make your way to DTN over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with WDT at the time, but that's a company that DTN acquired way back when, as a student worker doing technical support back, during my junior and senior year, but then transitioned into a different role. But I always wanted to go back to DTN and what we offered for customers. So when a position specifically, for an offshore forecaster opened up, I was very eager to throw my name in the hat, and the rest is history. Hired back on with DTN as a industry forecaster, and was able to also be able to forecast for live events as well as offshore and tropical cyclones.
Awesome. So, Sam, how about your journey? Where did you get started? How'd you get the weather bug, as we always call it, and make your way to DTN?
Yeah, much like Andrew, started at a very young age. I think 5, 6 years old. I've just always been obsessed with the weather. No particular storm like a lot of people have. I like to say that it's probably just me watching my dad watch the Weather Channel and yelling when it's supposed to rain on the weekends. And then from there, got my PhD at the University of Oklahoma, where I was focusing on air growth and numerical weather prediction. Moved out to Boulder, Colorado, where I was working at NOAA for a couple of years in a postdoc that was focused on subseasonal to seasonal prediction using AI. And then joined DTN in May 2022. So about 3 years coming up. A lot of focus on tropical. I think I've always been intrigued with tropical cyclone forecasting. Because of this quality of it that is both horrible and great, which is that it can all be boiled down into a few numbers, and it's a very dangerous quality of hurricane forecasting. That's like, okay, here's a latitude and longitude, and that's obviously a very small part of the story, but it just makes the statistics and the machine learning training just so intriguing to me.
Absolutely, and it's an area of forecasting that has so much potential to be improved over time.
100%.
I grew up in Nebraska, very similar story to you guys. Kind of got the weather bug at an early age, and I found myself early in my career as a TV meteorologist in Mississippi in 2005. For the non-weather historians, that was a bit of an active year, one of the most active years on recent record. And a month into my career, I was covering Hurricane Katrina on TV. So I had to learn about hurricanes really fast. And then you learn sort of the awe and the power of those storms, a tremendous amount of energy that it takes to produce one, and that is produced via one. And so When they occur, they're impactful and they make times very busy for DTN and our customers as we get going. So kind of want to dive into that conversation of sort of understanding both how customers are impacted by hurricanes and then some of the innovation we're working on. So Andrew, I'll start with you. You have a really cool job at DTN in that you interact with our customers as they make very big decisions as hurricanes bear down with them, either in the oceans or on the coast as storms impact. So how have you kind of describe what your job is like when it's an active hurricane time? I know it gets very busy for you. What is that sort of workflow like for you if you get 1, 2, or I think we've had up to 7 storms at any given time across the world? What's that experience like for you and your team?
Yeah, it ranges from anywhere from producing a forecast. Sam has produced some excellent data for us to help to really fine tune those forecasts as to where those tropical cyclones will go. So producing actual reports that we provide to customers. But the real big piece that our customers love is the consultation. We provide, very face-to-face conference call style consultations around hurricane risk, not only just focused on that particular storm, but also focused upon their particular locations and what they care most about.
Yeah, how have you seen sort of the level of communication change over the time you've been doing this in terms of the questions you get asked, kind of the level of detail, the decision making that's being made on our customers' ends? How have you seen that sort of adapt and change over time?
Yeah, I think early on, a lot of the focus was merely upon the track forecasts and how close it was going to be to their locations. But as we've gone over time, as we've worked with customers over time here the last 8 years, we've really seen that the focus shift away from the track line, and our customers really start to grasp that it's really about the impacts associated with a hurricane. You can There are times when you can be relatively close to the center line of the hurricane, but the overall impacts might all be on the eastern side of the system, and they're sitting west of the hurricane and have clear skies and maybe just a little bit of a breeze. So that shift has really been more on the impact base, specifically for their operations as well. Some locations care more about the wind or even the wave heights that are generated from a tropical cyclone, while others are more concerned about storm surge or rainfall impacts if you're further over land.
Sure. We talk a lot about, and we've had some of these DTNsights podcasts talk about risk communicators and sort of the interaction of customer and meteorologist. Sort of what level of detail do you get into with the customer as it relates to understanding how they work, their workflows, their learning the customer's business to make those impacts of the forecast mean something to them?
Absolutely. Typically in the preseason, so around this time of year, we are in conversation with our customers to see exactly what their needs are from a risk standpoint. And then from that, going forward into the tropical season, we will tailor those conference call consultations to meet those impacts and risk levels that they have for their particular operations. And it changes customer to customer. They could be doing, almost the exact same thing, but one has a little bit different level of risk than the other. It's really dependent upon each customer.
Yeah. Um, Really fascinating. In how have you seen technology change the way that you've been able to communicate with customers over time? And I bring that from the standpoint of you can go on social media today and there will be people giving all kinds of sets of information. We're kind of in an information overload world as it relates to weather, whether it be social media, access to spaghetti plots of model tracks. How have you seen having to combat that where people are receiving information maybe outside of here that you need to sort of work through to help them get sort of that single source of information that they need to make decisions?
That's really interesting. The customers that we've worked with, despite all the social media, um, you know, aspect of it, just spreading disinformation, which could occur online. We've actually seen that help and solidify our relationships with our customers, because what the information that we provide over time, it really allows them to view us as the trusted source. So it really helps. It might help raise awareness of possible tropical cyclone activity for our customers. That might be the benefit of that social media aspect. But for the actual delivery of the message, delivery of the forecast, it has really helped us become more embedded within their operations because we are the trusted source to those customers.
Absolutely. There's always an emotional aspect to hurricane forecasting. A lot of times the customers you're talking with, they have a big business decision, a very costly business decision to make. They also have their livelihoods. Oftentimes, if you're talking to a customer in Houston that is worried about things going offshore, but they live in Houston, there's an employee aspect, and can be a scary time when you have a major storm, heading towards the coast. How have you seen your communication have to sort of counteract or work with that emotional response of the fear of the storm, so that people can make really smart, clean decisions as it relates to what's going on in their world?
I think the best way to kind of combat that emotion is for us to provide just really clear and concise information. We really try to give them the most likely scenario for any situation, and that allows them to make confident decisions. The last thing you want to do in an emergency situation, especially if it's going to impact your family, is to have information that is filled with uncertainty. So we really try to provide that clear-cut source of information of the most likely scenario, the best that we can provide for them, so that they can make decisions not only for their business but also for their employees as well. And a lot of our customers too, they do a really great job at integrating employee safety along with their business safety as well. So if we do know that there is a high concentration of employees in a specific area, I typically will add a slide or two just to highlight those employee impacts for them. That really allows them, from their HR and their operations side of things, to really make sure that their people are taken care of.
Yeah. I've had the honor to sit in some of those conference calls on these major impact storms, and it is always sort of fascinating to see both how professional our customers are in those really tense moments. They understand this is part of their job and part of their lives, to integrate this information to make smart decisions for their business and their family. And I give you guys a lot of credit for how you handle that. So if we switch gears a little bit to Sam, one of the cool things about how you both interact with each other is Sam's sort of focused on the side of innovating and bringing new data information in to help with that communication, making it very pertinent info. So Sam, I know you and the team have been focused on a lot of innovations. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Would love for you to take us through kind of what we've been working on as a company and where we're pushing the boundaries forward on tropical information as we head into the future.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working closely with Andrew for the last couple of years now on tropical prediction. And yeah, I want to emphasize that in this day and age, we have our AI tools and then we have our human forecasters. And I don't think that you can have success without or with just one or the other. I think we really benefit from having this partnership where we get feedback from the human forecasters. And human forecasters in this day and age, you need to be utilizing the AI tools at our disposal, but you cannot just have AI running by itself without the expertise of the humans. So I think we have a great partnership that we've put together over the last couple of years. So with that said, yeah, we've worked on this new innovation over the last couple of years, where we've developed this standalone tropical cyclone forecast that is formed from weights that we obtained from this trained ML model, looking at hundreds of other forecast models. And then we blend all these forecast models together and come up with this high resolution, both temporally and spatially, forecast of winds, of precipitation. And we work with the National Hurricane Center in a way to not necessarily compete with their public forecast, not necessarily to disagree, but rather just add value on top of their forecast. And so here is a direct comparison of the official public forecast versus our DTN tropical cyclone forecast product. And you can see we go out farther into the forecast period, out 7 days, at a 1 hour resolution, this fully formed wind field, as Andrew was discussing. The tropical cyclone impacts are much more than just a single point. You can have a lopsided storm where the east side of the storm is much more impactful than the west side, and we need to be able to capture that in our forecast fields. And so that's what we are showing here on the bottom row, how DTN's really added value to these tropical cyclone forecasts. And I'll continue forward here. One of the things that we're working on this year is adding to our probabilistic guidance. So one of the shortcomings of the official forecast and a lot of other agencies' products is that they use a prescribed cone that is symmetric in width and the same width for every single storm, every single situation. And that's just not realistic. In any given situation, you can have a high confidence forecast, you can have a low confidence forecast. You can also have an asymmetric tilt one side or the other of the forecast track. And so here's a great example from Hurricane Lee a couple years ago, 2023, as it was recurving northward in the Western Atlantic. And while the forecast track did take it offshore towards Nova Scotia, away from New England, there were several models that were still bending it back towards New England, which would have significant impacts in some dense population centers. And it's very important to be able to capture that. And so one of the benefits of what we're developing right now is being able to highlight that potential, that particular threat on the, in this case, the west side of the storm towards those bigger cities. So big step forward, I think, from our single symmetric cone of uncertainty.
And I think it's important, Sam, to note, when you're making a decision, it's seldom a yes or no decision. You have to weigh a lot of risk. And so when you start to build in probability, right, you start to think like, okay, this might be a 5% likelihood of happening, but I care about that because if that
Exactly.
5% comes true, the financial outcome or the safety outcome becomes really massive. And then I know, Andrew, your team will look at that and say, like, I need to note that there is a really small probability of this occurring. So don't necessarily, maybe that's not the action you need to take, but you need to know that you need to react accordingly to this low end risk that's possible.
100%. That's why this probabilistic guidance is very important to add farther value on top of our deterministic grids, because it is, at the end of the day, all about risk, especially when we're talking about these 7 to 10 day forecast periods, some of these longer range forecasts for these storms. And so this is just another example of the differences between two storms where we have a high confidence forecast on the left side. You can see the much narrower cone, the much higher density of forecast models. And then on the right-hand side, a much wider cone of uncertainty, and the spread out, chaotic, spread of forecast models. And in this case, with Tropical Storm Lan going towards Japan, that matters. To have that degree of uncertainty, we want to be able to communicate to our clients, the official forecast track might be taking it here, but there's still, as you said, even just a 5% chance of it heading left or right, and that's so important to be able to communicate. And then I want to emphasize also some of our successes from last year. So this is the track forecast from Hurricane Beryl, and another part of our innovation has been creating our tropical cyclone forecasts in advance of the storm actually being named or recognized by the public agency. So in this case, we had forecasts being issued about 2 days in advance of the National Hurricane Center actually calling this a tropical depression and rolling out their forecasts. And in many cases, that adds critical lead time to be able to make decisions, from our forecast products. Additionally, obviously you ask questions. Okay, we're going out 7 days in our forecast track. How accurate actually is that? And you can see, so these are all the tracks, just color coded by their initialization time. And the fact that they're all kind of overlapping here show a very consistent forecast as the hurricane tracks through the Caribbean. And as we know, Beryl made landfall along the Texas coast. And that was a little bit of a trickier forecast that you can see even our forecast, we're shifting towards the right over time. But we made that shift a lot earlier than the public forecast. So in addition, the beta version of our probability products last year demonstrated just a really great value here, where we were able to highlight actually that potential along the Texas coast, even though the deterministic track forecast took it a little bit farther south. The probability track density actually was shifted a little bit towards the right and highlighting that threat for Texas. So good success story last year for sure with Beryl. And then again, just wanted to highlight this comparison then between the National Hurricane Center and DTN. While our official track was very similar actually this time, taking the hurricane just into the southern tip of Texas, our probability product was really highlighting the right side of that track. And then our wind forecasts, again, we want to focus not just on the center of the storm and the single line representing the track of the storm, but rather the full wind field, precipitation fields. And with Beryl here, you can see we're leaning towards the right side, as is pretty typical with landfalling storm tracking northward. And it's just very important to be able to emphasize those impacts away from the center of the storm. One of the other aspects with Beryl, obviously, that made big headlines well before Texas was that it smashed records with the rapid intensification, even east of the Caribbean. And you can see that our intensity forecast actually performed very well, highlighting that rapid intensification up to the earliest Category 5 intensity ever recorded in the Atlantic.
And rapid intensification, for the non-scientists watching, is a really hard thing to forecast and kind of still misunderstood, so to speak, in terms of when it's going to happen, how rapid it's going to happen. I know we're quite proud of being able to pick up on the clues of it, and it still even outperformed that a little bit. I mean, it's really, really intense rapid intensification of the storm, but very impressive capability to pick up on those trends, quite early on.
Absolutely. And it's becoming more and more important as we're seeing more storms that are rapidly intensifying right up to landfall even too. So to be able to capture these very quickly evolving situations in our forecast is exceptionally important here for our clients. Now, I've talked a lot about the wind impacts, but I also want to emphasize some of the work that we've been doing with precipitation forecasts. And precipitation is a little bit of a trickier field to capture because it's a lot noisier, and it's not necessarily as contained as the wind field around the center of the storm. And so what we've been doing is taking again, several forecast models that are publicly available, and then some of our own, and capturing the tropical cyclone within this noisy precipitation field. And we're using a deep learning method called a UNet. And this is the same technology that's used in self-driving cars. It's used for identifying features on X-ray scans. And what you see here is basically labeling each pixel in an image, assigning that to a particular object. And so you see like the cars, colored in blue, the trees, highlighted in green here, people in red. So you're able to take a full image, and we can pinpoint every pixel that's assigned to a tropical cyclone. What we do from there is then group them all together and using our new weights, blend them into our forecast model. And so this is just a simple model blend. You can see the tropical cyclones kind of blurred out. A lot of the extremes are washed out. And then on the right side is what we get. What we take this UNet with our individually assigned pixels, realign them, use our weights to blend all of our models together, and we have a much more detailed image of the tropical cyclone with these extremes highlighted as well. And this is exceptionally important now too, where we're seeing more and more storms like Harvey and Florence with just catastrophic flooding. It's so important to be able to capture these extreme values in our precipitation forecasts.
That's
And then,
that's such a
yeah.
cool use of a different technology to improve weather forecasting. I'm always impressed when the smart cars can pick up a stop sign. I seem to struggle with that in my own eyes. But we use that cool tech to make a forecast better. I think it's a really impressive feat. So well done to you and the team on that.
Yeah, I love that we are overlapping the technology that's used, in meteorology, that's used well outside of meteorology in self-driving cars in the medical field. I think that's amazing. And I don't know, this is the wonderful, exciting world of AI, I guess. And then the last rollout that we're doing this year is a tropical cyclone severity index. Again, one of the things that Andrew was talking about earlier with the impact of tropical cyclones, it's first of all, obviously much more than the track of the storm, but it's also much more than the wind. And we characterize hurricanes, as much as we are trying not to, I feel like increasingly, it's so hard to not characterize a hurricane by the wind speed. And not only the wind speed, but the maximum wind speed. So we want to talk about impacts because that's what actually matters. And so we've broken down tropical cyclones into 4 impacts. We do still have the wind. It is, still important. But more than that, we have storm surge. We have rainfall causing freshwater flooding, and then also tornadoes. And we saw that with Beryl too, and a few other storms last year that made landfall that had actually significant tornado outbreaks associated with it. And it's something that people kind of, I think, forget. As a hurricane's making landfall, the headline is, hurricane such and such with maximum sustained winds of 140 miles an hour, and that's what they hear. But we really need to highlight the individual impacts here, and also then bring them together to compare what the impact from one would be compared to the impact from another. So we're looking at these 4 tiles, and these are, we're looking at the bullseye of rainfall up in the Carolinas and northern Georgia, in the southern Appalachians. How does that actually compare impact-wise to the impact from the wind as the storm makes landfall, or the surge? And what we've done is weighted all of these separate peril types by their economic impact, and also where they're impacting, based on population, and we can weight all of them to group them into a severity index. And so you can see as Hurricane Helene is tracking towards the Big Bend region of Florida, we're highlighting that wind and also storm surge impact for sure. But one other aspect of this is that bullseye up in the Carolina region. And as we know, some of the biggest headlines from the storm were actually the catastrophic flooding that happened in western North Carolina. And this is, even a little bit underdone, I think, for what ended up happening. But it's nice to be able to show this with a storm that otherwise, by the time it was inland, it's a tropical storm, it's a tropical depression, it's rapidly weakening, might not be getting the same attention and headlines as it would, as a Category 3, Category 4 hurricane making landfall. But it's still as important, if not more, to key in on the rainfall and the inland impacts of tornadoes too. So that's what we're able to capture with this severity index, and I'm pretty excited to be able to roll this out this year.
Yeah. So I think you hit on some really interesting points, which is, I mean, for the longest time, and we've talked about this all the way throughout this podcast, is everybody focuses on the center line.
Yeah.
Everybody focuses on the landfall location. The impacts are way, way beyond those two things. And to be able to capture the impacts for a broad geographic area, sort of tune them to the economic impacts or disruptions that occur as a result of this, I think this is going to be a very impactful set of insights for a lot of people and a lot of customers.
I really hope so. I mentioned before that honestly, it's the fact that the hurricane can be boiled down to a single point, a single maximum wind speed number that makes it so interesting to people. It's so accessible. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but we really do need to emphasize these impacts away from the track of the storm and away from that maximum sustained wind speed number, because it's so much more than that.
Absolutely. All right. Great stuff, Sam. Thank you so much for taking us through this. So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you a question here. We're starting to look ahead already into the 2025 hurricane season. What projections do you have in terms of what we have in store for us in terms of impacts this season?
Yeah, a little bit of good news, a little bit of bad news as far as the number of anticipated tropical cyclones. Some of the good news is we are phasing out of La Nina. Typically during La Nina events, we have a more active Atlantic season. We're not expecting that this year. We're trending towards what's called a neutral pattern, which is it's not neither that La Nina or El Nino, I guess, categorization of the atmosphere. I know a lot of people hear a lot about La Nina and El Nino, and it's just a general weather pattern from a global perspective that gives us some insights into upcoming hurricane seasons. But we're in a neutral pattern, so that's, I guess, some of the good news there. Some of the, I guess, the bad news is that we still are expecting for above average ocean temperatures widespread across the Atlantic, and we are still expecting for a lower than normal vertical wind shear. And typically when you have lower vertical wind shear, that allows for these tropical cyclones to become vertically organized, which then allows them to maintain their intensity or rapidly intensify like we have seen in the last few seasons. So all that being said, we are expecting for an above average year, maybe not as extreme as your 2005 example from earlier in the podcast. But we're still expecting for an above average year, probably in that 17 to 19 tropical storm territory for the Atlantic.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting trend that I've seen over the past, probably decade, maybe a little longer, is we've always talked about hurricane season kind of kicking off, midsummer and sort of into the fall, but we've seen storms be named and become, active earlier and earlier in the season. It will be interesting to see. One of the other intriguing insights about us moving from a La Nina to a neutral pattern is that is typically a pretty big signal for an active severe weather season. So we do expect, and it's been very active in March and into April and May and into June could be quite active from a severe weather standpoint. So we won't have a shortage of weather threats as we continue on throughout 2025. And it sounds like, slightly above normal. Are you getting any insights in terms of maybe more favorable impact locations this year or more oceanic storms than, on average?
Yeah, the main regions that we're focused on is the eastern and northeastern Gulf. So unfortunately, regions that got hit fairly impactfully last year, that's going to be a more favorable region for tropical development this year as well. We call those homegrown tropical cyclones. That is, again, at play based upon previous years that are similar to this upcoming season. And another area is just the open Atlantic, but maybe even a little bit of a hint at the U.S. East Coast, maybe being a little bit more favorable this upcoming year compared to years typical.
All right. We will keep a very close eye on that as we get closer to the actual hurricane season. We're going to wrap this up with Heat Burst, which is where we ask a couple rapid fire questions here at the end, learn a little bit more about you. So We'll go with each of you for this question. First off, what is the craziest weather event you've experienced personally? We'll start with you, Sam.
Okay. Let's see. That's tough. Living in Oklahoma, plenty of examples, but actually it was my first year in Boulder, I would say. Not late, it was September 2020. And we had a horrible fire season. We had just terrible wildfires everywhere. And it was to the point, it was Labor Day weekend, it was to the point that we had ash raining down on us in Boulder. And we were up into the mid to upper 90s on Sunday. And then by Monday night, we had snow falling. It was in the 20s. We ended up with, I think, 4 or 5 inches of snow. And I think that was just the craziest swing that I've ever seen, from mid to upper 90s to snow in about 36 hours.
Did you did you find any ash in the snowfall?
No, but it was another comparison that was just wild. It's like, all right, again, 36 hours earlier, it's like there's ash falling and there's snow falling. It was just wild.
We had a blizzard where I live in Nebraska a month ago that was had a big dust storm and across New Mexico and Texas, and so some of the red dirt was the particulate that the snowflakes formed around. And so we actually, when the snow melted, we had Oklahoma red dirt all over. It was kind of gross, to be honest with you, but you get some pretty wild things. So Andrew, how about you? The most wild weather you've experienced personally?
Yeah, I'll veer away a little bit from the 2013 Moore tornado that severely impacted Moore, Oklahoma, and I'll stick with maybe not the most extreme, but stick with the theme here of 2007, the re-intensification of Tropical Storm Aaron. I was pulling a night shift on my duty there at Weather Decision Technologies at the time, and I was probably one of the few people awake during the actual re-intensification of that system over the state of Oklahoma. We think it was mostly caused by what's known as like a brown water effect. So we had so much moisture over the state that we actually had old tropical cyclone from a few days ago re-intensify back and have tropical storm characteristics. So it's just really fascinating being the only person in this building, going up to the big windows and watching the trees in the parking lot just completely bent over from the wind speeds that were ongoing.
Yeah. Nothing says hurricane intensification like over Oklahoma. Absolutely crazy. That was a really, really wild one. It was pretty early in my career. I remember watching that from afar as super intense. So I'll ask both of you the next question in a slightly different way. I'll start with you, Sam. So what's the most sort of proud achievement that you've had in terms of kind of you've been more focused on kind of the innovation and developing new products? What's the coolest thing you think you've worked on in your career?
Okay, my whole career or DTN?
Sure, whole career. It's great.
Actually, so I think the thing that I'm most proud of was unrelated to any job that I was at necessarily, but it was I'm trying to remember the year, 2015. There was a series of massive snowstorms that hit Boston. It was about 4 storms in a row, accumulating something ridiculous like 90, 95 inches of snow in a month. And I was just very curious because there's tons of statistics on the size of an individual storm, but I was very curious, okay, what is the probability that this happens? What's the return frequency of a month of 90 inches of snow in Boston? And I think it was a Friday night, and I was just at a friend's house, and I was working on my computer, and I ran some statistics and put that out on Twitter, and that went wild. And fast forward, 5-6 days, it ended up in the Washington Post, and then I had the Massachusetts Office of Emergency Management call me up and say, we're working on trying to get funding from FEMA for this situation, which has never happened before, and their particular rules, I guess, were that we can fund for 1 storm, but not for the 4 storms. And so they wanted to have me write up this memo to just highlight how rare of a situation this is and the extenuating circumstances. So that memo ended up on President Obama's desk a few days later. So from a tweet Friday night to Obama's desk, I think that's the proudest moment I've ever had.
Sounds like a wild Friday night, Sam.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah.
that's awesome. Really cool. So Andrew, I'll ask it to you this way. What's sort of the proudest kind of forecast or sort of interaction where you feel like you made a massive difference and had to make, as a forecast, you kind of have to make a call sometimes and sort of get out there. What sort of sticks out as the big moment for you?
Yeah, I'll go away from tropical cyclones here and go more to the live event world. I was forecasting for a major live event that was ongoing, thousands of people outside, and there were signs of a severe thunderstorm moving towards that particular location. So issued a thunderstorm warning for that location. Called up the client and told them, hey, you're going to be impacted here in hour and a half of this significant severe storm. So as a result of that, they took action. They evacuated the event. There were TV meteorologists who were having different opinions on where that storm was going to hit. So it was kind of my call that I made was a little bit on the line, and turns out that there was impacts at the live event of that thunderstorm. So thankfully, the customer that we were working with had enough trust in what I was providing for their big outdoor live event that they made the right call in terms of evacuating the people there and getting everyone to safety.
Awesome.
That's
I
great.
love it. Yeah, really cool. Okay, we'll end up with a completely odd one here for you, but in all of your travels, whether it be just traveling for fun, coolest place you've ever visited, and the best meal you've ever had out on your journeys. We'll go with Sam.
Best meal. That's interesting. That's a good one. I have to think about this. Honestly, all right. So I'm a little bit of a pizza snob, and there's pizza snobs out there for sure that I don't know if they would agree with this or they'll be shocked, but best pizza I've ever had, Anchorage, Alaska. It's a place called Moose's Tooth, and it's the best pizza hands down. And nobody will believe me, and they'll roll their eyes, but highly recommend it if you ever find yourself in Anchorage, Alaska.
There are people in New York and New Haven, Connecticut rolling their eyes at that. But if I ever find myself in Anchorage, I will stop at the Moose's Tooth. That sounds awesome. Yeah, love it. How about you, Andrew?
All right. Unfortunately, I can't give you the restaurant name, but this would be in Chennai, India. Went to Chennai for a friend's wedding several years ago, but just an outstanding meal that I did not anticipate. I think that's one of the reasons why I made it so good. I'm a little bit picky when it comes to food. And so going into a region that is all vegetarian was a little bit out of my comfort zone. But we got off the plane after 25 hours of travel, and my friend took us to this just Indian restaurant, and I got a masala dosa, and just how good it was, it just shocked me. The food on that trip in general was just outstanding. That's a kind of like life-changing trip, just being able to go to India and really experience Southeast India, but also when we went to Mumbai a little bit later that week. It was great.
That's awesome. I love that. There is nothing better than like life-changing food. When you take the bite, you're like, whoa, what is this? Very cool. Well, gentlemen, I thank you for the time and for the really amazing insights. We always hope it's not an impactful tropical season, but if it is, that's what we're here for, is to both innovate and provide communication to those that we serve and keep them protected and minimize the risk from these impactful weather events. So we applaud you for the work that you do, and thank you very much for joining us. And for those watching, we appreciate you watching DTNsights. Hope you found this to be a lot of fun and really insightful. So thanks a lot to both of you, and thanks for everybody watching.